Welcome to the Arise 360 End-of-Year Roundtable Series. I'm your host, Seyitan Atigarin, and today we're focusing on arts and culture, a space that in 2025 experienced a powerful moment of return, revival, and renaissance. This year, Nigerian art moved beyond visibility into reclamation and redefinition, from the return of stolen heritage and the strengthening of national institutions to global exhibitions, creative spaces, and bold multidisciplinary practices. 2025 forced important questions about ownership, sustainability, and cultural power. Well, joining me for this conversation are the voices shaping the ecosystem from different angles. I'm talking about Richard Vedelago, cultural entrepreneur, curator, and founder of Nahouse; Sosa Omorogbe, creative consultant, curator, and art dealer, as well as Anthony Azekwoh, a multidisciplinary artist whose work reflects the evolving language of contemporary Nigerian expression. Together, we're unpacking the moments that define 2025 and asking what the future of Nigerian arts and culture must look like beyond symbolism, visibility, and applause. Welcome back to the Arise 360 End-of-Year Roundtable Series. Now let's get straight into it. Let me introduce my panelists, starting with Richard Vedelago. He's a cultural entrepreneur and curator whose work sits at the intersection of institution building, community, and contemporary African art. As the founder of Nahouse, Sir Richard has been instrumental in creating creative spaces that support artists, collectors, and curatorial dialogue in Lagos. His work, of course, reflects a deep commitment to sustainable cultural ecosystems, positioning Nigeria not just as a producer of art, but as a serious hub for heritage, curatorship, and long-term cultural infrastructure.
Bigger picture, think about it long term. I mean, Nahouse was a project that was conceptualized there and then, without much thought, without much sort of referencing, but it was intentional. And I think the moment itself, there's a lot of times throughout our journey that moments will present themselves. And I think it's important for us to have the fortitude and the bravery to take our idea from just an idea, but to full completion and make sure that we execute in the right way, and something that we believe that are impactful, represents who we are individually, but also collectively, and ensuring that we do so in a manner that's respectful to our past, that is contextual to our present, and that have the vision to achieve what we want to achieve that will better the future.
All right, then our next panelist is Sosa Omorogbe, also a creative consultant, curator, and art dealer whose practice bridges contemporary art, global markets, and cultural strategy, with exhibitions spanning Lagos and international cities. Most recently in Abu Dhabi, Sosa has played a key role in amplifying Nigerian artists on the world stage. Her work focuses on shaping narratives around African art that goes beyond aesthetics, interrogating a value, visibility, and the evolving dynamics between culture and commerce. Last but definitely not the least is Anthony Azekwoh. He's a multidisciplinary Nigerian artist whose work spans visual art, installation, and experimental forms. His practice reflects a generation of artists pushing beyond traditional boundaries to explore identity, memory, and contemporary experience through layered storytelling. Anthony's work speaks to the future of Nigerian art, bold, hybrid, and globally conversant, while remaining rooted in local context.
If you not getting me, forget about it. And now by Lambo, is that why I shout? Them do, who yet them do? I know they see them, who yet them do? A little investment in cryptocurrency. Everybody I know see. Them do, who yet them do? No, they see them, who hear them do. But the hunger now, so what they know fit and do. Odogu is wise, can't you see? Kude sereni nukaza, watemari shake panza, watemaro panza panza, isipanga, chukuluku panga. Thank you for your support, on God, of course.
So 2025 marked a historic turning point for Nigeria's cultural heritage. The return and the repatriation of the Benin bronzes represented more than restitution. It signaled a global acknowledgement of ownership, memory, and cultural justice. At the same time, institutions like the Museum of West African Art, MOA, gained prominence, pointing towards a renewed commitment to heritage management, curatorial excellence, and public engagement. These developments raise pressing questions about institutional readiness, long-term stewardship, and whether Nigeria can translate symbolic wins into durable cultural infrastructure. Let's take a look at that moment where those Benin bronzes were returned, and we'll come back and start the conversation. After decades of cultural displacement, a significant chapter in history is being rewritten. 119 Benin bronzes, some of the most iconic symbols of Nigeria's heritage, are back on home soil. The Benin bronzes are among the most celebrated works of African art, crafted by the Edo people centuries ago, and are only a fraction of what was looted during the infamous British raid of 1897. Yet, their return marks a new era of cultural diplomacy, one which the Dutch Consul General says aligns with the Netherlands' policies on cultural restitution and historical justice.
What we see here today is the result of a long process. And the last, basically, highlight of that process was in February this year, when the DG of the Nigerian Commission for Museums and Monuments, Mr. Holloway, went to the Netherlands and an agreement was signed by the Dutch government to return the Benin bronzes that we have in the Dutch government collections. And from that moment on, a whole logistic process started. And basically, let's say, art that was stolen in the colonial eras. I think with the Benin bronzes, we know what happened to them. We know why they were taken out of Nigeria, when they were taken out of Nigeria. So when you do the analysis, when you do the study, and that has been done in the Netherlands also of this collection, the provenance of these objects, it was time for us to bring them back. And that is what the Dutch policy says. If it's very clear that objects are stolen, taken under distress, then obviously we will return them to the rightful owner.
It's an amazing teamwork between the National Commission for Museums and Monuments of Nigeria, also with the Embassy and the Consulate of Netherlands, and then with the Customs of Nigeria and AGS. We worked all together to do a very good clearing and very smooth clearing in a very short time to import all those artifacts back to Nigeria. And then, you need a team that is trained to European standards to transport art. So you need to have the best equipment, you need to have the best trained staff. You are transporting a Nigerian history. It's artifacts that are 100 years old, it's history of Nigeria, so there can be no mistakes.
Each artifact represents more than bronze. It's a legacy of craftsmanship, kingship, and the spirit of a civilization that continues to inspire global admiration. Of the 119 objects returned, 113 belong to the Dutch state collection, and 6 were donated by the municipality of Rotterdam. Their presence, according to the head curator at the National Museum in Lagos and eventually in Benin City, symbolizes a reconnection with identity and history, while also having a significant impact on Nigeria's cultural landscape and tourism industry.
I'm elated that this is happening, and we've always been agitating for the return of these objects that were carted away during the Benin expedition in 1897. And we've always been clamoring for these objects to return back to the country, and some countries have done that, and we're glad that the Netherlands government part of those countries that have agreed to return 119 objects to the museum. And you could see in the display of the objects, there are some of our iconic objects. And then, we are the custodians of these objects. We are the owners of these objects. And so we know how to preserve them and conserve them.
And this is the Benin Bronze Memorial's head. Upper Benin Memorial. I don't know the specific urban this one belongs to. But at the same time, I'm really tripped because the way I see it, although there's no carbon dating, but you can see, we are looking at it, and because of the pattern and the other feature that's the process, it looks very, very old. And it must be a priceless collection for us, and for us to get it back, it's got a long way.
Now, of the 119 Benin bronzes returned here today, 4 will be on display, while the rest will be transferred to Benin City. There they will be formally received by the Oba of Benin. Their return marks a significant moment in Nigeria's ongoing efforts to reclaim its looted heritage. It also reinforces global momentum behind the cultural restitution and historical justice that we so seek. Reporting for Arise News here in Lagos, Seyitan Atigarin. All right then, so thank you so much, my panelists. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you, Sosa, Richard, and Anthony. Now, when we think about the arts and culture space, there's so much we're going to dig into, but a major highlight this year was the return of the Benin bronzes. I think just, for what it represents in itself. I think I want to start with you, just because you're an indigene of Edo State. I want to know what it means for you on a personal level. The fact that we're seeing this return of something that is so critical to your cultural identity. What does it mean, especially as an artist, as a curator as well, who deals with artists?
Mm-hmm. It means so much. I don't know how to even put into words. My business is literally called the 1897, paying homage to Benin, but also with the exhibitions, I was hoping that in my own little way that I would be able to heal, or heal personally, but also help others heal from such, that extractive event. It's very surreal that they're in the process of being returned. I can't believe it, and I'm just happy. It means a lot.
All right, then. Yeah. Richard, I want to come to you. How do you reckon, in seeing this wave of, artworks coming back, how can Nigeria leverage heritage restitutions and make sure that when we're doing these returns, it's not just a facade, it's something that actually contributes or gives back to the art space and, the cultural sector as a whole, especially for someone like you who has a space that showcases Nigerian artwork?
I think that, when we think about what spaces mean to individuals, art in itself is a form of independent thinking. Mm-hmm. It's to allow for people to go and learn, connect, and be inspired in one way or the other. And I just think that, of course, the Benin bronzes coming back home is an important landmark in regards to us taking full ownership of our heritage. And at the same time, I think it's important that we build out more spaces to be able to house these kind of sort of historical artifacts that are coming back into our country. They all play a vital role in identifying in how we identify with ourselves as Nigerians today. And I think it's important to do that. But I do think that, people like Billy Holloway, who's at NCMM, he's doing a wonderful job in actually how he's building out sort of the museum infrastructure and how he's going about doing that. So, of course, we sometimes want to criticize that there isn't enough, but there is people taking the necessary steps, and we are building. Building takes time, and I think that we will eventually get there. The first step is the most important one, which is bringing the bronzes back home. Mm-hmm.
Well, in your, and I'm going to come to you, Anthony, because I'd like to get your take on this as well, even just on a general level. But to just follow up with what you said, Richard, how can, or rather, what role do private cultural spaces and entrepreneurs play in strengthening public institutions, or rather the public perception of art, as it were, what role would you see a house playing just in the conversation around, because it always seemed like something that was far-fetched when it comes to like galleries and just creative spaces for artists to just be and exist and be appreciated. So what role does a private space like a house play in the grand scheme of things?
I think ultimately it comes down to access, right?
Yeah.
It's access to people to engage with work. I mean, a space like Nah House, which is a multidisciplinary space that sits at the intersection, of course, of fashion, art, photography, gastronomy. It's a space where somebody with one specific point of interest might come to Nah House and then discover another one. So again, sort of allowing people to sort of, organically discover things that they would never have sort of maybe gone out of their way to discover becomes an interesting sort of route to market of how we're building out the interest levels in the artistic landscape, or the creative landscape as we like to call it.
Yeah, 100%. What are your thoughts as an artist, just kind of thinking about what that means? Years ago, we were basically robbed off of the things or the arts that makes us who we are. And all these years after, we're seeing the return back. Are we ready to receive these things, or is it just a facade? Is it something that is more emotional than practical? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, the question of whether or not we've been ready has always been secondary to the fact that, whose property is it? And I believe that, a people's agency is very important, especially to their identity, to how they live. I think it's been a very weird double experience like that all of us have had, being able to see the work of our own ancestors in different places apart from home. So I think now being able to, I would say, try and restore that agency, and also in a way, I guess, start exercising that agency is something that I'm really looking forward to in this next era.
All right, then. So let's get into the IP policy that was signed in. Nigeria unveiled its first national intellectual property policy to drive innovation and economic growth. Now, it marks this historic milestone in its innovation with the presentation of the National Intellectual Property Policy and Strategy. It's the country's first unified framework designed to protect, commercialize, and scale creative ideas in pursuit of a 1 trillion economy. Now, the policy positions Nigeria as a regional hub for intellectual property and innovation in West and Central Africa, while aligning IP development with trade, digital art, in the African Continental Free Trade Area agenda. Now, the National Intellectual Property Policy and Strategy was presented under the leadership of the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, with support from the Honorable Minister of Arts, Culture and the Creative Economy, Hannatu Musawa, and the Honorable Attorney General of the Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi San. Now, this initiative reinforces Nigeria's openness to innovation and its commitment to unlocking the full economic potential of ideas for all Nigerians. And I'm bringing this to you. First off, this happened at Nah House. I believe this was just last week. And we've had this conversation in the creative space about intellectual property for the longest time. And now we're finally seeing that move where, Minister Jumoke, of course, in conjunction with Minister Hannatu Musawa, signing that policy. What does that mean for the art space? Sosa, I'll start with you.
I think it finally means that we're getting government backing. There's a lot of private patronage. I see it with my clients, with collectors. We have private spaces like Nah House, galleries as well are private. There's been a lot of private interest, and I think not enough government backing. And we need the two to work in tandem in order to see real growth and real progress. And I think this is one more step in the right direction, where we see our government actually supporting the arts meaningfully and putting the, not just theoretically, but actually putting money behind the arts, not just,
Well, is this something that you've had to deal with personally? Have there been any IP issues? I mean, you deal directly with, with artists. Has there ever been like that problem in the art space in your scene, as it were? No? Not really. All right, then let me come to you, Richard. I'd like to know your thoughts. What does this IP policy do for the creative arts?
Again, going back to the sort of the primary objective, which is ownership, it gives artists the opportunity to own their art in a way that they haven't had the opportunity to do in the past. It gives us who are in sort of in the cultural space the opportunity to actually protect the artists through knowing that these laws exist, and I think that's the most important thing. So, you know, at the end of the day, when we think about how long an art piece or a visual sort of point permeates over time, it's infinite, right? You're thinking about the Mona Lisa today and see how long that's been a relevant sort of point of view. So Anthony's art as a point of view needs to be protected going forward. You know, that will be either the guy that buys it, the guy that makes it, the guy that sells it, has to have some structure and framework into understanding what that means. I think that's an important sort of step to protect everybody in the space, 100%. Which only creates more value.
Yeah, definitely. Cross-board. Anthony, I need you to come in here, you know, from your vantage point as an artist. Is this something that doesn't really affect you, or do you think that it's a policy that is important and is needed for Nigerian artists and, you know, and even, I guess, Nigerian artists in the diaspora and in Nigeria as well?
Yeah, I think more than important, I think it's essential, you know, when you have a policy like that that lays a very solid framework that allows a fertile kind of ground for like people to be able to not just create, but create safely. Like what Richard was saying, like being able to create and know that my works are being protected, not just by me or like, you know, by our own like small space, but like by a bigger body who is investing in it is very important.
100%.
Especially because every day now you're finding new artists are coming up. And in the past like decade, for instance, work being protected and being defended was something that was a huge point of contention, even within artists themselves. So I feel like this is a great step.
Definitely. Well, before we go on a break, I want us to take a quick look at the video of Minister Jumoke Odowole, of course, talking about what this IP policy means going forward. Let's take a look.
I talk about the creative sector, our music, our fashion, our food doing incredibly well. And so this was important. And so this kind of helps to monetize and helps to also show the seriousness with which someone mentioned that the administration is taking it. So many administrations have talked about it. I think it was Outbreak In, and many presidents or people have said, but this administration has actually led. And your minister in particular, my colleague, Eche Hanatu, has been really passionate and dogged about pushing for this launch for her constituency.
All right, then that was the Minister of Trade, Jumoke Odowole. We're going to go on a short break now. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation on the End-of-Year Rise 360 episode on arts and culture. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. You're still watching Rise 360's End-of-Year series, of course, the arts and culture episode. Now, while heritage returned home, Nigerian contemporary art continued its ascent on the global stage. Now, events like the 10th anniversary of ArtX Lagos reaffirmed its role as a key platform connecting local creativity with international audiences, while exhibitions abroad like Abu Dhabi Art 2025 expanded the country's cultural footprint. But global visibility also brings complexity. Who controls the narrative and how is cultural value measured? And is the market success really, truly, does it reflect cultural impact? So I'm going to come to Sosa, and I want to ask you what 2025 revealed about the global relevance of Nigerian contemporary art. How should we be measuring success beyond sales, visibility, and international validation? Well, before you answer that, what was it like even just being a representative of Nigerian art at Abu Dhabi 2025? Talk to me about that experience.
Okay. I mean, it was incredible. I could not, it's probably my favorite fair I've done.
Yeah.
And the significance of that, you know, again, like I spoke about, you know, private and the need for private and public collaborations, and it was just that. And Richard was also there. Well, ish. You were there in spirit. Oh my God. His gallery was there. You know, so again, to see Nigeria prioritize the arts, you know, prioritize galleries, prioritize our artists on a global stage, and, you know, set up that bilateral relationship with the Abu Dhabi government was incredible. It was also a very collaborative experience. So, you know, We shared the booth with Oda. There was Ko there as well. People really got to see the breadth of Nigerian arts from, the modernists shown at Coates, the very contemporary artists, with us, with Windsor as well. I think it was a very meaningful experience. And I never thought I would get to represent Nigeria in anything. I'm not sporty at all, so I never thought, there would be the opportunity to present Nigeria artistically. And so that was deeply meaningful.
So what was your biggest takeaway from it? What did you learn as a curator of just being in that, you're just talking about, you not even seeing yourself in that position, but being there, what was it like? What was your biggest takeaway from that?
So for Abu Dhabi Arts, I guess then I was wearing my gallerist hat, so my gallery was there. My biggest takeaway was something that I've always known, which is that Nigerian stories are universal. The stories that our artists are telling, that are very us. I mean, Samuel Norum, who we showed his work, is made from Ankara, but the work connected with people globally. Joseph Aino as well. And the quality of Nigerian art is global. It's world class. And so just seeing the reception was just very affirming for me. So I'm like, okay, we're not just onto something, we're there. We're there. Our artists just need the platform, they need the support, they need the protections of things like the, IP. The IP policy. That was just so it was very affirming.
All right, let's come to you, Anthony. Just because there's this, there's this. Almost, I don't know if it's a Nigerian thing, but there tends to be like us trying to seek global validation, and that's not a bad thing, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to sell your market, you want Nigerians to see it, and you want the rest of the world to see it. But as an artist, when you think about international collaborations and international exhibitions, how can Nigerian art maintain authenticity while appealing to global audiences? What is it that you do to make sure that your work is a reflection of your authentic self and is not, losing its identity and trying to cater, fully to a global audience?
And something that Sosa actually said that really hits that, really shoots across home for me is that, at the end of the day, Nigerian stories are human stories. Human stories are universal stories. And I've forgotten which director that said this, but the most personal is the most creative. And the most creative is things that people from all different walks of life can understand. So right now I'm running up a collection called The Wedding. And you have these characters, they're featured in normal Nigerian regalia. And you would think that okay, because people from the West don't really understand this dressing, they would be othered by it. But it's maybe they may not understand the dressing, but they do understand the emotions. They do understand what a wedding is. They do understand the feelings and emotions that come during these very time periods of stress. And I think that to me kind of underscores the thing where it's the minute we stop trying to appear, the minute we start telling very core stories, very human stories of joy, of loss, of love, of grief, of happiness, these are things that universally are understood. So I feel to me, it's kind of a thing where the minute you stop trying, it happens. Where it's you even see it across the music labels. For instance, Rema is going crazy worldwide by speaking this language and again making music in the sound. So I think with Nigerian art, that to me is people do understand and they feel it very viscerally when we're telling honest stories.
And I want to come to you, Richard. I 100% agree. What I'm getting from Anthony is going back to the basics. But I want to ask, how can we measure cultural impact, beyond commercial success? It's great, when you sell an art piece. But outside of that, is there a way for us to measure how well we're doing, how much of a global impact that we're having, with our artwork and the art space, as it were?
Well, I think there's always been historic mediums to look at how art has performed, even on an annual basis across the world. I think African contemporary art has definitely grown in significance year in, year out consistently, and we've seen that. we've seen some of the most prominent artists now, or African artists, or artists from the continent.
Yeah.
There's so many different politically correct ways to say that.
Hey,
but
you sure?
I'd rather not take the chance at this moment in time. It is the end of the year. I am trying to start 2026 on a bang, so without offending anybody from the continent.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing artists take center. I think in 2024 the most sold artist in the world was Abudia, which is an Ivorian artist.
Wow.
And he sort of outsold Damien Hirst. So we're now starting to see real prominence, real challenging in regards to engagement, to research. People are now actually actively looking for specific Nigerian or African artists from the continent. I think that's a testament to where we are globally. I think there's been a lot of work that has been significant that I'm seeing even from gallerists, and this is one of the great things that we're seeing now, the participation in international fairs. People like Dolly at Retro Africa going all the way to Seoul to participate, from consistent, every single one of the galleries who sort of developed in the international fair scene has promoted African contemporary art and has made it more visible and more accessible. And I think that's the success. Seeing more galleries participate on those fair scenes will give you a great indications of where we are.
But do you think there are any risks that come with this rapid internalization of Nigerian contemporary art? And this is kind of like across board. Or do you see any risks whatsoever from your vantage point? Sosa, any of you can answer this question. Just to be sure that we're on the right track, is there anything that you're saying that, hey, if we don't fix this, then we might be in trouble? Is there anything that comes to mind? Yes.
You're probably speaking to the worst person for that, because of how quickly I'm building out galleries across the continent. So, you're probably, and I have major plans to build out even more quickly.
Well, so no risks at all? You think
there are always risks.
Yeah.
I think where we're sort of starting to see a real issue is, of course, and that will come over time, is human resources. I think the lack of people who have been educated in the creative sector. Because it's such an individual, a lot of the creative sector is, you learn as you go along, right? But we need to create more institutions for people to have more experiences and learn more about the different fields that they are wanting to participate in the creative landscape. So I'd probably say that is the only challenge that I have on a day-to-day basis, the human resources aspect. Otherwise, the talent is there. The know-how is there and spaces are now becoming more prominent. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Do you want to answer that?
I feel like for me, I think the focus on craft is something that is a worry, especially like in my part of the field where you have, again, all of this attention is flooding like the space, and a lot of that can be distracting for people who are young and who are coming into the space for maybe they've seen the promises of money and grandeur and fame, and it's like this is
It looks cool from the outside.
Yeah, but it's like it's like a job, man. Like it's our 9 to 5. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a 9 to 9.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people unfortunately may see that from the outside and see the glamour, but forget that there's a whole craft attached to this that you have to be dedicated to, as opposed to the fun stuff.
Van Gogh cut his ear off, right? shows how committed he is to the craft, right?
I think that to me is just it for like younger artists with just the focus on the work itself.
All right. So do you want to answer that before we go on our next break?
I think that there are a lot of risks, actually. I think so. When any field grows rapidly or appears to grow rapidly, you have issues like human resources, there's a lack of education. I think we need to make sure that we're being sustainable, that the growth is sustainable, and it's not just like, at one point it was very cool and it was very cool and to be an artist or to be an art practitioner, and that time has gone. We need to make sure that we're actually building systems so that it's not just a rapid, internationalization. Rapid internationalization. It is a sustained, promotion of art within Nigeria as well as abroad. So more things like Abu Dhabi Art, more residencies, more museums, more actual education at every single level. So we're constantly growing. That's what I think.
We're going to go on another short break now. But when we come back, the conversation continues. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Rise 360's End-of-Year Roundtable Series, of course, touching on arts and culture with me, Seyitan Atigarin. Now, beyond museums and fairs, 2025 underscored the significance of creative spaces where ideas are tested, communities are formed, and culture is experienced in real time. Now, spaces like Na House and similar hubs across Lagos are increasingly central to artist development, curatorial experimentation, and cultural dialogue. Now, these platforms raise critical questions about sustainability, funding, and whether cultural entrepreneurship can coexist with artistic integrity. So I'm bringing it back to you, Richard. Now, can Lagos's growing network of creative spaces truly become the backbone of Nigerian arts ecosystem? And what must we do for them to truly be sustainable long term? And of course, I'm going to use Na House as an example because that is like, a specimen that a lot of people can actually look to make sure that they're recreating like these hubs around the country.
Yeah, I do believe that Lagos can and is Nigeria's sort of cultural epicenter. I think what we're seeing across the board is, of course, the development of a greater infrastructure, which again, I think it kind of reinforces the market. You know, it's an economy of scale thing. Mm-hmm. The more galleries we have, the harder it is to fail. So I think that's a really interesting sort of way to look at it, because ultimately, you know, when we're thinking about how we build out the conversation of what cultural referencing is in Nigeria, we need to build out not just Lagos, but our secondary and tertiary cities. You know, Nigeria has such a rich history across the board. You know, you're seeing MOA, for example, come into play in Benin City. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got a number of other cities that are ready for cultural revolution, as we've seen across the board in Nigeria. So places like Port Harcourt, places like Jos, places like Kano, who have a rich history and promote a specific individual point of view to those areas of Nigeria. So I think there's a lot of scope in building out more infrastructure. I think we are at a point now where we can look back and say, you know, I think just this last month there was like 3-4 galleries that just opened in Lagos. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's an interesting place to be, where up until 5-6 years ago there was like 3 galleries in Lagos. So to see that there is, you know, we're talking about 50-60 galleries now across the board. It's an impressive sort of place to be, and it's only a positive for the artistic space.
Well, I mean, you two have worked together. I mean, you have a space, you're a curator, you work with artists. I believe the first time we actually met was at Na House, and then you've gone on to also like work with other, creative spaces. Do you think that, or rather, what do independent cultural spaces offer that traditional institutions often don't? What's that thing that is missing between your traditional museum and a place like this as it contributes to the arts ecosystem?
I think they offer more opportunities. So for you to say you have a vibrant ecosystem in a space, it can't just be museums, it can't just be galleries. You need somewhere that's multidisciplinary and like dynamic, kind of like Na House, which I love. Artists need to have a range of opportunities to show their work. Mm-hmm. So places like Na House that aren't necessarily mandated to, run in a certain way can be more diverse in their programming. Not saying that museums aren't, but they needs to be a bit more rigid. Mm-hmm. But Na House can have VPS, you can have Swans exhibition that just opened up. They tend to, I would say within somewhere like Lagos, those spaces tend to be where culture is really pushed forward, and where history. Well, no one's like where history is made, but people remember these. And then, if we're talking about Na House specifically, the symbolism of taking that building, that's such an iconic building, and reimagining it, giving it a new life, really. That is just very, 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 very important within our ecosystem, where we're constantly tearing things down as opposed to rehabilitating them. So spaces like Na House just offer more, because artists need more,
And I think I should just ask you, do artists need more? I know you just wrapped up your exhibition, I believe it was at 1952 Africa. Do artists need more? How do these spaces nurture talent? Does it nurture experimentation, discourse? Would you like to see more of these kind of spaces as an artist?
No, definitely. I mean, like, we definitely need more, you know, and something that we just said, you know, when I was trying to do my first exhibition, maybe 5 years ago, I remember, because again, you only have this limited number of galleries and they have this limited number of curators. That means, like, you know, again, if these people say no, it's basically no die. So I think for me, I remember that time I had to basically rent out a space and build our own gallery ourselves, you know, for 3 days. And that's kind of how we're able to do the first show. So I think for me, like, spaces like Now House, spaces like 1952 Africa, spaces that are flexible enough to kind of understand the vision of the artist and also have their ears to the ground, which I think is something that Now House, like, do really well, where it's like, you know, not just the artists that are, like, you know, conquering, like, Art Basel or whatever, but the artists that people are listening to and connecting with. I think that's why, like, we need these spaces. We need spaces to champion those voices.
I mean, Now House PR team.
You
actually needs prayers at this point.
I will offer 3 dim sum.
No, but Richard, I want to come back to you. I mean, we've touched on, like she just said, it's almost started to feel like a PR team, but I think it's honestly because of just the questions that there's so many questions that Now House kind of gives an answer to, and that brings me to my next question. Did you start it, you know, thinking that you wanted it to be very community driven? Was it that curatorial and community-driven model, is that how you wanted it to kick off? Is that essential to the identity of that space? Or was it something that just happened naturally and, you know, you saw that it was working and you just continued?
I think I was really more focused on the work, on actually creating a space that actually meant something. In regards to the programming, the way that and, you know, every space and every gallerist, every curator has their own view on certain subject matters, and I just wanted That House to have its own view on, and that could be represented through collaboration. That was the key sort of fundamental for me, collaborating with artists, with different artisans, with different people, and giving them the freedom. That's why I said a contemporary space, giving them the freedom to be as explorative as they want. I feel we're very one-dimensional a lot of the times, especially within, I mean, my other hat, which is as a gallerist, you know, is very one-dimensional. I get to just like, okay, cool, how do I curate this and how do I put this out there? It's a specific audience, whilst Now House can actually touch so many different audiences, so many different demographics at the same time. And that's what it is. We've collaborated with so many cool people. With Sosa, she curated VVS. Anthony's got an upcoming show soon. So, you know, it gives me the possibility to really working with people and getting to understand what their vision is, and then, you know, step away and just say, you know what, you know, I've done the space, you guys now push it out there, and let's find that middle ground of what that means. We all have to build each other up in one way or the other, and collaboration is a key function of a successful endeavor.
100%. Well, as the heart of this ecosystem are the artists themselves. In 2025, multidisciplinary practice took center stage with Nigerian artists blending visual art, performance, installation, and new media to push boundaries and expand storytelling. Now, this approach reflects a generation of unafraid of experimentation, global dialogue, and creative risk. It also raises questions about support systems, audience readiness, and the future of artistic education and exposure. So, Anthony, I'm coming to you. First off, this whole conversation around what multidisciplinary art is, just for people watching that are still confused, and maybe for me, I might be, what makes it different from what people are used to? Because I still kind of struggle to understand it. So please help me untangle this web of confusion.
To be honest, it's a term that other people use to describe me. I feel like for me, I'm just an artist. But I guess like people are referring to the fact that, for instance, in timelines between 2013 and 2016, most people knew me as a writer. Between 2016 and then 2020, 2021, people started to know me as a visual artist. Between those times, people started to know me as a sculptor. Some people know me as a spoken word poet. Some people know me as like this. So it's like being able to bring like different disciplines together, where it's like traditionally a lot of people do focus on one medium and like excel at that. but I've been able to build my own practice and world, even relationship with my audience, by being able to be very good at multiple different things and being able to bring them together cohesively to each project.
So do you find that this multidisciplinary work as an artist, does it challenge like traditional market structures? How are you, because I mean, you, for one person who kind of like tends to dabble in a number of things, how are you able to navigate all these things and still like maintain that identity as a multidisciplinary artist?
Yeah, I feel like for me, focusing on one thing at one time, like, is something that has come really true, because at the end of the day, with all the projects I do, each of these things blend into each other. So for instance, my last collection, The Wedding, there's the visual arts at the forefront of it, but the core storytelling as a writer is also at the back, which people like receive very strongly. So at the end of the day, it's also finding ways to neatly package these things together. So I said that, yeah, I think for me, it doesn't get too confusing. I think right now for me, my goal is always, there's a story in front of me. Which medium is the best to tell the story? There's some stories that sculpture is the best way. There's some stories that are best written, some stories are best seen visually via like a painting or maybe an installation. But being able to really figure out the story and see what is the best way to communicate this to you is how I approach things.
I want to come back to you, Richard. When we look at multidisciplinary art, like even with everything that he's mentioned, does it serve as a bridge between local narratives and global conversations? And have you seen multidisciplinary arts like working successfully in kind of like putting all of these different things together? Does it work successfully from your vantage point?
I think ultimately it's just depending on how when you reference it, it's a body of work, right? So a body of work can have multiple expressions, and and I think at the end of the day, as long as it's well researched and well executed, I think then of course it has the impact that's necessary to create engagement. And I think that ultimately good art has to create conversation, and ultimately if you're able to achieve that through the artistry or the point of view or the discipline or the medium that you're going about it, and you're able to achieve that conversation, then you've achieved your goal.
What are your thoughts on that, Sosa, before we move to our next set of questions?
Yeah, I think an artist being a multidisciplinary artist just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Anthony said, sometimes you have an idea and just you need, maybe you're a painter, but this idea is not meant for a painting, it should be a sculpture. Most artists, I will say, work across mediums. So it might not be what you see out there, it might not be what they're selling or what they put out in the forefront, but before they make a painting, they're photographers, you take pictures of your models, or you write stories and then put them into build off on that. My favorite artists all work across multiple mediums, but they still, because they have a deep knowledge of themselves, you're still able to recognize who they are, whether it's painting or sculpture or performance. Their DNA is expressed across different mediums. I think that it works, it makes sense, and it's very marketable.
Yeah, essentially what we're saying, Anthony, is that you have multiple personality disorder. So just say that as a word for your wife.
As we start to wrap up, as we look towards 2026, from your individual, I would say standpoints in the art space, what does the next generation of Nigerian artists need most to thrive creatively and sustainably? I'll start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I think where we are now, and I'm discussing with a couple of people, we have an audience that's tired, that's like exhausted. This audience is also, worst of all, bored. This is an audience that is being bombarded by the social media algorithms, and now the algorithms have been poisoned by this very generic AI-looking stuff. You open your TV, you're seeing this very bland, long-form skits that we package as movies. This is an audience that's tired. It's tired. So
you shook that table, did you?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you look to your TV, you see the same thing, your phone says the same thing, you see outside the banner say the same thing. Right now, I think is the time for artists to be able to take the biggest creative risks. I think from this year, what I've been able to see, across Sosa's exhibitions, across Snail House, across even my work, is an audience that I believe is ready to actually receive more. The audience is ready to kind of take those risks along with us and be able to kind of figure out, okay, this has to be more. This can't just be this like endless like cycle of like hedonism. Like there has to be a stronger story that we're telling, a stronger story that I'm sitting down to listen to watch and experience. So I think that to me is, I think that like we're looking at the possibility of this big creative renaissance that's happening across all different fields, with different people taking risks, but most of all the audience taking new risks in music, in film, in fashion, in art, and being able to experience something new and like, you know, offer that new thing to the world.
All right then. Coming to you, your thoughts. What does the next generation of Nigerian artists need most to thrive creatively and sustainably, Richard?
Us today. I mean, I'm still trying to fix my today.
Yeah.
And I think, building out what I'm trying to achieve, and I think what everybody's trying to achieve in their respective field is going to be the key catalyst to what tomorrow looks like. I think all of us being engaged and taking on the challenge to build the creative landscape is going to give everyone the best opportunity of success in the future. So
100%.
all of us today, when I meet them, I'll tell them it's their own problem at that time. They should fix their own problem. Me, I'm still trying to fix my own one.
Sosa, I mean, you work directly with these artists. What would you like, going into 2026, the next generation of Nigerian artists, what they need to thrive creatively and sustainably?
Education.
Yeah.
Education and support opportunities. Those are like three things. I might not say three things.
No, it's okay. You can give us a list of 10 things. So I'm not running away.
Education. I see a lot of artists who are great, like skill-wise, great, but conceptually, there just needs to be more. And that's an education thing, learning how to think and go deeper than just like surface level, that, you can draw, you can paint, what are you laughing? You can draw, you can paint. But what's the thought process behind this? How do we go deeper? So that's an education thing. Allies, I don't know, but actual support. So I think people who are not artists, who don't work in the arts, we need you as well. We need you to go to exhibitions. We need you to donate to things. We need you to just show up. A lot of the time artists need feedback. And they need to see, this concept. They need to see proof of concept. So supporting, whether that's by collecting or anything. And then more opportunities. So residencies, events where artists can go and like get their, what's it called? Like a crit. Yeah, crits. Grants as well. We need the government to come in and really help. I mean, there's so many things. I could actually sit down and talk about all this, but education, support.
Yeah.
Education and support.
100%. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation with my panelists here, Anthony, Sosa, and Richard. I appreciate you. And I guess by the time you're seeing this, we'll be in the new year. So happy new year, guys. And thank you so much. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you. And I can't wait to see all the great exploits that you're going to partake in 2026. Thank you so much. Well, you've been watching Arise 360's End of Year Roundtable Series. It's been an amazing episode. If you're just tuning in, well, go watch it on YouTube. There's nothing I can do for you. All right, then. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. I'm Seyitan Atigarin. Thank you so much for watching.